The dictionary definition of impresario is a person who organizes and often finances concerts, plays, or operas. But I'm taking a liberty here to use the word to describe an extraordinary woman whose achievements and efforts are too vast to mention. I'll give you a taste of what she does. Gina Sedman is a multi-award winning entertainer, having won awards such as a BMA Artist for Best Gospel Artist, Rising Stars of the Desert, Best Jazz Music Artist, GHP Music Awards, Best Single, and in 2015, 16, and 17, she won the CV Music Award for Best Pop and R&B and Contemporary Artist. In 2016, she was chosen by CV Weekly as one of the top 12 interesting and influential women in the Coachella Valley. In addition, she is the CEO, president, and founder of GNA Universal Media, with an array of partnering companies such as NDME TV, the Indie Post, Indie Soul Radio, Under the Radar magazine. One thing I read about her is her passion for helping others. Her generosity, time, and spirit earned her the title of philanthropist. Gina, I have to say, reading about you, I am in awe. Where did it all begin?
Oh wow. I think it began when I was young. When I first when I was first noticed by my peers that I could sing. I think that was my first journey into the world of entertainment.
So tell me, how old were you? Where was this that you suddenly discovered that you had a voice?
Yes. Well, I used to, when I was younger, I lived in Inglewood and I was at school. And during that time, Deniece Williams was really popular. Um, and I used to love a lot of music that she sang. She was like one of my favorite artists. And I just remember singing a song at school, and all the kids started like just crowding around me and saying, "Oh, she could sing." And then they, took me to the principal's office and said, "Listen to her sing." And I was like, "Wow," and they would just follow me around at lunch, or we call it recess, and they would want to hear me sing. And I think that was the first time that I knew that God had given me something special.
Give me an idea as to what your early life was like growing up in Inglewood. Tell me about your parents and tell me about your siblings and what sort of lifestyle you had.
hmm Well, I was born in Chicago. My parents moved to California when I was quite young, probably about 2 years old. So I grew up in Inglewood, and during that time, it was starting to, really be infiltrated with a lot of gangs. And in my neighborhood, I can remember. I don't think it was such a thing for me as much, because just being a child, when we're children, we live in the play world. But I was aware that they were there, but I think my world and playing with my friends in the neighborhood was more important to me at that time. But yes, I when I was young, I grew up in a decent house, probably would be considered middle class America, with both parents in the home. My dad worked he was a truck driver, and he also had a lot of different contracts with. There's a restaurant out here, a breakfast restaurant out here that we have, that's quite popular, and he sold coffee to those. He was a supplier for coffee. So, based off of the type of work that he did, our life was really good. It was pretty normal until I turned about around, I think it was around about 7 or 8 years old. That's when things became a lot more complicated.
So you started singing out gospel. Who brought
Mhm.
music into the family home?
Yes, well, my dad was the first one that did, because growing up, I just remember listening to music that was not gospel music. My youngest sister, when she was born premature, and so from what my dad told me, the story was that at that time in his life, he was seeking a lot of different religions and trying to find out what was the right way. But he had been introduced to Christianity, and he said, God, if you're real, spare my daughter's life. And if you spare my daughter's life, I'll serve you for the rest of my life. And my sister lived. And I do remember a time when my dad, I remember we were in our room by our bunk beds. I just remember it so clear to this day. And my dad coming into the room, and we all got on our knees and we gave our life to Christ. My dad, led us to our life with Christ. And so I would say my dad was the forerunner of introducing me to Christianity. And based off of that, put me on a journey to know the Lord and to have a reverence for him in order to want to sing music to glorify his name.
You speak very highly of your father. Tell us
Yes.
about your mother.
Yes. My mom, she was not really in the church when I was younger. She was more into Catholicism. But it was almost just like a thing that she did, when she went to church, or she had her, she would kind of do some of the rituals. But I remember growing up with my mom in a much more secular environment than with my dad. After they divorced, my parents divorced when I was around 7 or 8 years old. I'm thinking it was around 8 years old. And so when my dad would pick us up, we had more of a Christian, lifestyle. And then with my mom, it was more of, secularized, as the world would call it, more secularized type of lifestyle, not really embracing Christianity. My dad, I love my dad very, very much. I respected him very much. But my dad grew up hard um, in Chicago. He came from a quite a big family with many siblings, and so he had to be the protector, of his family. He was taught to be the protector by my grandmother, his mom. And so because of how my dad was raised during that time, obviously he had daughters, and so he was very, he had more of a sterner hand, I would say, than my mother. So we knew, but it was more of a fear and reverence of respecting, which is something I think that's absent in today's society. In a lot of homes, there's not a lot of reverence for parents or the respect. But we had a lot of reverence, I'll put it that way. And not only was he wanting to make sure that we did the right thing, but by him being a Christian and him wanting to be, obey the Bible, we were really taught a lot of discipline. So my mother was a lot more on. She was just totally the polar opposite of my dad. In regards to, we had a lot of liberty to pretty much, do a lot of things, but I think we were thrust into an adult world. And I would prefer to speak more so for myself, because I don't want to speak for my sisters, but from my perspective, they would have to tell their own, stories. But from my perspective, I felt that we were thrust into an adult world under the hands of my mother's home, and we were having to be subjected to things that we should not have been subjected to. So that was difficult growing up with my mom, her being the primary caretaker for us. It was very difficult.
Let's get on to your first choice, an interesting one. You've chosen James Brown, Get Up Off of That Thing. Tell
Yeah.
us what this means to you and why.
Yeah. Well, I say that in everybody, we all have different parts of who we are that all make us who we are. I don't think is one way or the other. We all, there's just different things that move us and that motivate us, and different pieces all together that make us one whole person. And I think the song Get Up Off That Thing by James Brown is, I think that the reason why I like that is because it taps into the fun side of who I am. I love to be silly. I love to have fun. I love the 70s. I love the style of funk music. I think it's the bass line and just the bass. and just the time and just the clothing that was wore, and it was just fun. And so when I listened to that song, I enjoy dancing, and it just kind of makes me want to get up, and it makes me have fun, and it's just it just reminds me of a very fun time in my life growing up in the 70s, so yeah.
I want to go back to something that you said because I'd be interested to explore this. You talked about your parents getting divorced when you were about 7.
Mhm.
Were you aware of how quickly you grew up after that, and how it made you feel?
Yeah, I think I became more aware of it in my teenage years. And the reason why I say that is that everything was happening so fast, and we were obviously aware that there was changes in our home. But I think I became more aware of the responsibilities that were placed on me, the enormous amounts of responsibility that was placed on me as I became a teenager, and that's because, as when you're a teenager, you want to get out there and you want to have fun with your friends. You want to do certain things that you start pulling away from the grip of your parents, and you start getting into your own individuality of the things that you like and who you are. You're exploring that part of yourself in your teenage years. And I think that's when I realized more so how much um, my mother depended on me to be in what I consider an adult role, in which I was not an adult at that time. Yes, I was learning and I needed to learn certain things, but I think that I was dependent on so much where it began to be more problematic in my teenage years for me.
What sort of a student were you as a young
Mhm.
pre-teenager?
I will say I was a question asker. Um, I've always been inquisitive. I've never been the type of person to just go along with the masses just because that's what I'm told. Um, I do I do want to specify that I was raised well, and I was raised to respect authority. So it wasn't where I wanted to be disrespectful, but I think that I've always been a person that had a very inquisitive mind, and I think I was always that one to raise my hand and to question things, not just because someone said, okay, this is what it is. Red is red. I want to know what makes up red. Why is it red? What creates that? Can I look behind the scenes and find out the makeup of red? Um, and so, therefore, because of that, wanting to dig deep, I think that I became very bored with general education, because I began to I had that mindset. Well, I only need what I need, and I'm not interested in anything else that I don't need. So I'll throw out what's not important to me, and I'll leave what is important to me in. So basically, that's I think school. It was kind of a challenge because I think that I thought different. I thought different than, you know I was more creative, and I think they were more wanting me to be a lot more academic. It's like, okay, as long as I learn how to read and do math, I'm good. But it's like, let's get down to the creative parts. So I think school for me is where I learned that I was more so a creative person.
Track 2, Jackie Wilson, Lonely Teardrops.
Yes. Lonely Teardrops. Lonely Teardrops just reminded me of, once again, a childhood. It reminded me of the normacy in my life. During that time when I would listen to Jackie Wilson albums, I was still in my home. We were still in our home with my mom, and I think things were a little bit more normal, and we would dance. We played Jackie Wilson a lot. I just loved Jackie Wilson. I loved how he sang. I love how he voiced it. I loved his performance. And I don't know, it was just something about Jackie Wilson that just drew me to him as an artist, and just how he sang the music and what he sang about. And it just reminded me of a great time in my life, cleaning up in the house, and turning on the music, and turn on the records, and try not to bump it so it doesn't scratch, you don't scratch your mom's records and stuff. So it was just a good time. I think it was a normal time in my life.
So let's get back to you singing. You started out very, very young, gospel singing. How was this career progressing?
Mhm. Well, it started progressing basically in church. My dad and I just want to specify, I didn't really grow up with a Black gospel background. It was more of a praise and worship. Um, and my dad was a praise and worship leader. So in church, I remember him having the cassette tapes. I don't know if you guys had those back in the UK, but there used to be cassette tapes, and they used to have the cassettes, and you would put them in a, you know, like this radio and this boom box, and you would close it in and you would press play, and then you would hook a microphone up to it, and it's just, it wasn't the best. It didn't have any special effects on or whatever, but my dad would sing in church. And I remember him calling me up in front of everyone to sing. And he recognized, you know, that gift that I had. He wanted to steer it over into more into singing praise and worship. And so my dad would call me up and I started singing in church. And I absolutely hated it. I hated it because I didn't want to be put on the spot. I've never been a person that liked to be put on the spot. I like to just kind of be in the background, but because I do sing, it's put me in the forefront. So I have to be in the forefront. But I've always just liked to be in the background. And then I kind of felt like my other sisters, I had two other siblings at that time that was in the church. And then we had friends. And I just kind of felt like they weren't doing what I was doing. And I felt singled out. And I didn't want them to feel like I was better or that I thought I was better than them. I wanted them to be included, but I felt singled out, you know. But that was my first time, I think, my dad really pushing me because I think he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And then, you know, it went on from that to doing school talent shows. Um, and then, you know, from there, you know, it started progressing because I began to realize that God gave me a gift of music, and I started really enjoying it and pursuing it from that point.
So other than that, did you have an alternate career plan or something that you wanted to do? Because you've obviously spoken about realizing you had this creative streak.
Mhm. Actually, no. I from the time that I was realized that I could sing, I actually wanted to be a professional singer. I wanted to, but I never wanted to sing professionally for the admiration of it, for people to admire me or to be famous. That was never my thing. I wanted to sing because I always just loved music, and I think that expressing myself through it was really important to me, but I just wanted to make a living off of it. I just loved it so much. So that it was always music. I always wanted to be a singer.
Now, you've already hinted at this particular artist, and I have to admit I hadn't heard this track before. Deniece Williams and Silly.
Yes. Yes, Silly was one of my favorite. I remember the album. It was a white album. You know, she had white on and she had the little wrap on her hair. And I used to listen to Deniece Williams religiously. I just loved her music. I loved her voice. I thought she sounded like an angel. And so I used to sing her songs, and singing that Silly reminds me of when I was in, I believe I was in the fourth or fifth grade, and we had a school town. It was like it was more of a we would go to the auditorium and they would have like school programs. And I'm not sure if it was like a Martin Luther King program or a Black History program. It was something like that. It was a program that all those kids would get out of class and they can go into the auditorium and watch. And they asked me to sing, and I sang Silly. And I remember I got up there and I sang, and I remember the kids laughing at me.
Happily so.
They made fun of me. Um, and they made fun of me because of this reason. The radio edit did not have the 12-inch version at the end. So it was cut off. And there was a part at the end, you know, where Deniece Williams, you know, she made these, you know, after it would fade on the radio, she was doing these, you know, little fluctuations in her voice, and she was going up high and low and high and low. And I had the album version, so quite naturally I was singing the whole thing, and
Can
the
you
kids started
demonstrate the
laughing.
highs and lows of
I
that
don't want to
track?
demonstrate that right now. It's too early in the morning. I'm actually getting over a sinus infection, so I probably wouldn't, do it much justice. But anyways, it was just kind of like a fluctuation. She would just go really high note, and it would go low, and really high and go low. And so that's basically what. And the kids thought it was funny. I guess the sound it sounded funny to them. At the time, and it was kind of scarring for me. But hey, you got to go on with life.
Did you ever meet her?
No, I've never. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Let's scratch that. Yes, I did. I did meet her. I met her actually in my adult years. It was a concert with Jonathan Butler, Ray Parker Jr., and Deniece Williams. And I met her, I think it might have been now about maybe 10 or 11 years ago. I met her in a concert, really nice lady, very sweet. So that was wonderful. And I heard her sing live, and I was just like, wow, this is awesome. So yeah, it was a good thing.
Talk to me about the first concert you went to. Who was it and why?
Right. I believe the first concert that I attended was um Roger Troutman and Zap in Los Angeles. Yeah, because that's when Computer Love was really popular, and yeah, it was Roger Troutman. That was an amazing, it was at a smaller theater in downtown Los Angeles, but it was like wow, that was the first concert that I attended. It's nice. It's lovely.
When did you graduate? Did you go to college and graduate? What did you study?
Yes, I did graduate high school, and I didn't not go to a university. I did attend a junior college briefly. And while I was in junior college, I did study directing for video production and directing. So I went more into the theatrical arts and English. So that was a primary, but I didn't stay in it because I just I don't know, something about me. I just found it was just kind of boring for me. I would lose interest in it. I was such a creative person. I just wanted to get in there and get what I wanted, and then I was out of there. I just wanted to know how to do this, and so I was more skill oriented than long-term education. It's just a part of my personality. I want to just get in and chop chop move move. Well, let's go. Let's get to the facts.
So your next choice is Carlton. She's a bad mama jama.
Yeah.
Great selection, by the way.
Yes.
Where were you when this came out, and what were you doing with your life at the time?
Yes, I was young, and I love that song because I used to skate to that song. I have a favorite uncle that moved out to California from Chicago, and he used to love to skate, and he was also a DJ. And so we used to skate together, and that song was like when that came out. I mean, that was like on repeat all the time. I mean, I would just take it off. I believe I had the 45, and it would just I would take it off, put it back on, take it off, and I would go out in the backyard and I would skate to it. And I just loved the song. It was just something about it. It was just the song, at the time when it came out, it just hit me, and I just loved to skate to it. It was a great song to skate to. So
When did you move into your own home?
yes, um, when I moved out of home when I was about 17 years old, and I got my first place probably around 17 on the way turning 18. So I was definitely, an early bloomer. I wanted to get out and explore the world at an early age. So yeah.
So where did you move to?
I moved to a place called Covina. Covina was the first place I moved to. When I was young, and like I said, growing up in Inglewood and Los Angeles, it's a lot. Most of the communities out there are very um, very hard pressed. A lot of them are, it's a lot of poverty. A lot of them have a lot of gang violence. And well, certainly in the communities that I lived in, we moved quite a bit growing up. So I pretty much covered all of LA, Inglewood. And I think seeing a lot of the things that I saw is either going to grip you and you'll become a part of the environment, or you're either going to see it and say, I don't want to be a part of that. And I remember a friend that my mother had moved to Diamond Bar when I was quite young, and we were able to go over her house, and she had this enormous 2-story home, and it was a beautiful home. Diamond Bar was more of a suburbanized place during that time. They were trying to build it up so that they had a lot of upper middle class 2-story homes or pools, and it was a lot further, probably about an hour away from where I was living. And it was just beautiful. And I remember looking at it as a child, and I was like, wow, this is what I want to be, living somewhere beautiful. I don't know where I'm going to be, but I just know that I don't want to be around this. I want to be somewhere like this. And even at a young age, when a lot of children were getting involved in drugs around me and different things like that, I made a choice that that was not going to be my life. I was going to live in somewhere beautiful, and I was going to figure out a way that my life was going to be better.
What kept you on the straight and narrow?
God, God, I think that the relationship that I have with Christ Jesus, that my dad introduced me to at a young age, was the thing that kept me on the straight and narrow. I'm not going to say that I did not, in my youthfulness, of course, I did a lot of things that I should not have been doing in my growing. But I
But
will
that's
say,
part of growing up, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, but I will say I never experimented, it wasn't drugs or alcohol or anything like that. It wasn't anything far out or, crazy. It's just possibly the normal teenage rebellious things, that you do, or you're going through life and you're trying to figure life out. But I know that I always had that foundation of Christ in my life, that was that conviction that didn't keep me from going totally. If I would be around people and they're like, oh, let's do this, I'm like, oh, if I was going to do it, we were going to go and whatever, do what we were doing. But then there was always this thing when they say, okay, let's do this. Like, no, there was always that place that I just wouldn't go that far, where I was like, no, that's okay. I'm not going to go that far. That's too far for me. And so I would definitely say it was my relationship with Christ that kept me grounded, and that kept me not going as far as I probably could have gone if I didn't have that foundation. So, yeah.
Has your faith ever wavered at any point in time?
Never. Never. Not one point in my life have my faith wavered. I will say this, I've had a very difficult life. I've had a very uncertain life. I've had trials and tribulations just as many people have, possibly for my age, more than most for my age. I've lived a very difficult life. I wouldn't say hard life in the sense where the hard knocks of things that, where, maybe people would experiment with drugs and be out on the streets and how to get there. But when I say difficult, I mean just growing up and the way that I was raised, having to navigate through that type of life was difficult. It was a difficult life. And I could have, based off of what I went through, started to blame God or doubt God's existence. But I just never did. I never blamed God for anything, wrong that has happened in my life. I've never wavered in my faith. I've always believed that Jesus was Lord. Never wavered. But my lifestyle, it was a point in my lifestyle that the things that I was doing in my life were contrary to what I knew God wanted me to do in his word. There was sin in my life that I knew that God wasn't pleased, but there was always that thing in the back of my mind, I've got to get this right. I've got to get back to where God wants me to be. but I always just lived and walked in his grace and his mercy for my life. And so that's what it's been, but never have I ever doubted God's existence or that he was Lord. I just always felt that times that, that I, the things that I created by me making bad decisions, I just felt that those things happened because I made bad decisions. It wasn't God's perfect will for my life. It was just because I walked away from what I knew God wanted his best for me. And as a result of that, there was, a lot of times there was hardship, and the times that there wasn't hardship because of someone else, that I was dependent on, maybe my mom or whatever. I just believe all of those things ultimately and work for my good because they were a part of my life. Adversity is not always bad. And I think a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm so mad at God because this happened in my life. Okay, yeah, it might be hard times that you're living in that moment, but adversity is not always bad. Adversity can be a good thing because of adversity. If you look at it in that way, it can actually push you into your destiny. It can mold you into who you are today. You can look back and say, man, I'm glad that there was that hard time. I'm glad that that person turned their back on me. I'm glad that these people didn't support me. I'm glad that I received that rejection, because that very thing caused me to have that time to myself, to find out who God created me to be, and that I moved into this, or maybe it just pushed me into this place in my life. If I had not married this person, I would not have moved here. And then that had to connect to give me this job. And then I met that person. So if you kind of look at it like that, life is a puzzle piece, and trials are just a part of the journey that we live. We're all going to have highs and lows. It's not a bad thing. It's good. It's good because it takes you to where you need to go. But if you get caught in that bad and you start being bitter and you start blaming others, then that's when it becomes bad, because then now it stops you from moving to where you're supposed to go. So that's just how I've always looked at life.
Your fifth choice, Stevie Wonder and Visions. Tell me about your
Yes,
selection.
yes. Inner Visions is my favorite all-time song of all time, period, hands down. How someone can write a song and not be able to see, and be so talented and be able to write a song about the visions in his mind and what he sees. I think it's in my opinion, is one of the most well-written, deeply, oh man, just the way he sang it, the way he wrote it, what he said, and what he saw in his blindness. It's just powerful. It's just powerful. And I think it just connects to me and how I think deep. It's taking time to look at the beauty of life and to see that, the visions in his mind, that there's a better day coming, all of the things that were happening in the world, but to know that there's a better day, that God has something greater for us at the end, and that's what I see in that song. So that song resonates so deeply with me.
Going back to your creative streak, you are a creator. Mm-hmm. And you have launched various enterprises. Mm-hmm. I want to know what motivates you to do so.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things is that I've come to realize late in life, because to be honest, I couldn't tell you beforehand what was my motivation. I couldn't tell you. As I got older, I began to realize that one of the things that motivated me was that it was a point in my life that I didn't feel that I had that validation at one point in my life, by my foundational roots. And I was trying to find out who I was and what made, I'm trying to word this in the correct way here, but I think it was the thing that it was the only thing that made me feel that I had value to do things, to get out there and be ambitious and do things. I had to create, different things, because when I would create those things, then I would feel as though I had value. That was my way of validating myself. And that was the beginning of why I believe that I would start so many things and I would do so many things and I would go from one thing to the next. Now the motivation has changed. Now that I know who I am in Christ, and I know that I don't have to try to prove myself to anyone or validate myself for anyone. As I began to get older, those launchings became motivated by trying to support and help someone else see their value. As I said before, we come from something, but if you take that negative and you turn it into a positive and understand why you went through it, then you'll understand what your purpose is in life. My purpose through the rejection, through the lack of support, through all of the hardships, was to feel that pain and to be able to understand the pain of others and the lack of support of others, and the lack of opportunities that others had not experienced. So because of that, I'm able to feel the compassion for other people and them not being able to get an opportunity, or someone closing a door in their face, or maybe they were in a home where they didn't get the support, or they were not told their music was great, or they were told that they couldn't get an opportunity to act because they didn't fit the look that Hollywood was looking at, or the experience that Hollywood needed. So it became, GNA Universal Media became that place where the broken and the rejected could have a voice. And so all of the different facets of the company, the film, television, radio, music, all of those different things, media, storytelling, writing, it's all for opening doors for those to get opportunities that other people say, you're not enough. Well, I say you are enough. You are enough. So all of these things are part of who I am. I love the world of theater. I love writing. I love storytelling. I love music. Writing, all of these things. So it's all a part of what is my makeup, just like my hands, my eyes, my feet. GNA Universal is me, in the sense where it's all a part of who I am that is broken into a physical part where you can see different legs and creating opportunities for different people.
Wow. I love the passion with which you speak. It's extraordinary. We haven't discussed your siblings. Tell me about your relationship with them.
My sisters are all amazing. I love each and every one of them very much. We're all different. My oldest sister is, I always look at her as being this amazing, courageous woman, that she moved out of the state and she got married, has two beautiful children. She developed a wonderful, stable life of stability for herself, and I'm so proud of her. She very highly educated. She did well in school, and she went to move with my father at a young age, and she did very well for herself. And I love her very, very much. I have a sister that's a little bit younger than me. She's also absolutely amazing. She is a beautiful, beautiful, stunning woman to look at. First of all, she's absolutely stunning. She's very talented. She's working on her doctorate degree, and she is a model, an actress, a filmmaker. She's amazing, and she's, I'm so proud of her. My baby sister, she's also absolutely amazing, very brilliant, very, very smart minds. They got the smarts. They got the academic smarts more. I think they were more interested in the academic side, but all amazing women, coming from out of where we came from. I think they did tremendous a tremendous job making wonderful, wonderful things out of their life. And I'm so proud of all of them.
Your final choice, Cherelle, Saturday Love.
Yes. That was just a song that I love. How can you not love that song? I think that song is just very, it's catchy, you know. I loved Alexander O'Neal. I love the shoulder pads. Fun. I love the shoulder pads. I mean, the what is it? The sweaters and the shoulder pads. I mean, but his voice was amazing. Cherelle and him were just amazing together. I think they were just immensely talented, and it was just the song was just a fun song. These are just songs that I think that I just always had on repeat all the time. I just love them, and sometimes I don't even really realize why they resonated with me as much. Sometimes it was lyrically, but sometimes it wasn't lyrically. It was just the song and how well it was put together and how well it just grabbed me, you know. And that was just a fun song that just grabbed me, you know, that so I just love the song. I just love the song.
Um, I've got several questions going around in my head, and gosh, I know I'm running out of time. Of what are you most proud?
Mhm. What am I most proud of? Um, I'm most proud of the fact that I didn't give up. I'm most proud of the fact that I persevered through all hardship. Um, I'm most proud of the fact that against my own mind, um, knowing that at times that maybe I did not, I didn't have maybe the educational background that many have that are in my fields. Um, I'm most proud of the fact that I was courageous enough to trust God and never give up. Um, I think that that's one of the things that I could say that I'm most proud of, that I stayed on course, and not giving up, and just regardless of what I knew that possibly, you know, most people would probably look and say, oh, here's a woman that didn't graduate college, or here's a woman that grew up from a broken home, or, you know, went to lots of different schools, or, you know, you weren't supposed to be here. You weren't supposed to be doing this. You were supposed to, statistically, this was supposed to be where you ended up on the other side. Um, and to be able to see that God has allowed me to be here, to be able to write articles for so many people, and to be able to be used by God to create so many opportunities, because I didn't give up, and I didn't consider um, my education or the lack thereof, or I didn't consider where society would say that you shouldn't be there. I just ignored, you know, what society says. I ignore my own thoughts, even though a lot of times I did it not, you know, kind of even in a way doubting myself, or feeling like maybe it's hard. I don't know how to do this, but I kept moving my feet. I didn't let my mind stop my feet from walking. So at times my feet were walking, I was crying. At times my feet were walking, I was smiling. At times my feet were walking, I was making a whole lot of mistakes and I was embarrassed. Um, and in my mind, at times my mind wanted to give up, but my feet kept walking. And all I said to myself, just keep walking, because if God be for you, who can be against you? And God was my stability. And it still is and will always be the reason why my feet keep walking when my mind wants to stay still.
If I may, I would like to take you back to being 7 years old and your parents divorcing.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to go back and tell your younger self?
Mm-hmm. Um, what would I like to go back and tell my younger self? I would like to go back and tell my younger self um, that it's going to be okay.